This lesson is more of a review from something you've had in the past, and this is going over Pythagorean theorem. So there's going to be two parts to this based on the two side lengths. So the theorem itself is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So the a and b in the formula are called legs, and the two legs are the two sides that make up the 90-degree angle. The c is called the hypotenuse, and that's the side that does not touch the 90-degree angle. That is super important to know in order to figure out what way to solve this type of problem. So the theorem, again, says a squared b squared equals c squared. In the past, we've talked about distance formula, and the way I taught it was the horizontal distance plus the vertical distances squared is equal to the distance squared, and then we would square root that. And so the hypotenuse is like finding the diagonal distance, which we've done throughout the year. So with the calculator I recommend in class, these are the buttons that you would use in order to find the hypotenuse. And we notice that we have to add the horizontal distance and the vertical distance. And one way to remember this is that the hypotenuse has a t, and that looks like the addition sign. So that's one way to remember that you need to add these together when you find that. Okay, so here's two examples of it. So the first step you should do is, again, highlight the two legs, right? So the two legs are the ones that make the 90. So take your pencil and trace it. And in this case, we have two legs. And so we're trying to find the hypotenuse. And since we're trying to find it, we're going to add these two values together inside the square root. So the square root should look something like that. On the calculator, hit enter, and you should get 13 as your answer. Many times you'll get decimals or radical answers, such as maybe you might get the square root of 13. And in that case, just for now, convert it to a decimal. In the second example, again, we trace the legs, and we are looking for the hypotenuse now. Since we're looking for the hypotenuse, we're going to square both of these numbers, add them together, and all of that will go under the square root sign, and you should get 26 as your answer for that question. Okay, so that was an example where we're trying to find the hypotenuse. So the other problems then are trying to find the length of legs. And the hint is legs tells you to subtract. So we're going to take the hypotenuse, which is the bigger number, and subtract it from the smaller number and put that in the square root. That ends up being our formula. So again, same thing. If we were to trace the legs, we would find out we're missing a leg here. And so we're going to take the bigger number and subtract it from the smaller number in the square root sign. So 19.5 squared minus 7.5 squared gives you 18. Okay, so in this example here, when we trace what we have, we see we're missing a leg. So this would be 20 squared minus 16 squared. So hopefully this concept makes sense to you, because we're going to need it not just in solving a problem in itself, but in able to solve other problems that require this to find a missing length of one of the sides of a polygon, for example. So here's two more examples to try. So again, what is missing in this particular problem? It's missing the hypotenuse, and so we're going to add these up under the square root, and you should get 11.4. Over here, what are we missing? We're missing a leg, and so we'll take the big number squared minus the smaller number squared, and you should get 15.